Hi friends, I'm Amy and this is A Star Reads, and today's the day. Today's the day that Bridgerton Season 3 comes out. We're gonna have Colin and Penelope doing their little dance, and I'm so beyond excited. I've been waiting for this for a long time now, and I've been super hardcore fangirling for the last few months. So I am ready, and the second my cousin, because I promised I would wait for Jordan, the second Jordan gets home, we are watching it. We're watching the whole season. We're not the whole first half of the season, because the second half won't be coming out until June 13th. So I thought a really fun way to commemorate this special day in the Bridgerton world is to give some of these amazing characters that we know and love in Bridgerton book recommendations. I want to recommend to the actual characters a book based on what I know about them. And at least in this part, because I'm going to do part 1 for the first release for the first half of the season, I'm going to focus on some of the main characters that I know will play a big role in this. For the next release, for the second half, I'm going to focus on some of the characters that are important this season, but we haven't really gotten to know them as well, or we don't quite know what direction their storyline is going to go in. So I want to give myself the first half, like watch those first 4 episodes, get to know the roles those characters are playing more in this season, and then come June 13, I will do a second book recommendation for the other characters that I didn't cover in this particular round, and take into account more of what I've learned about them throughout this season so far. So, for example, Francesca, she's a character that's been there all along in a sense, but we really know nothing about her, and her role is going to become a lot more prominent in this season. We'll learn a lot more about her. So I'm going to wait and hold off on characters like Francesca, the Mondriches, people who are going to be really important this season, and they're going to have big changes in their lives, but I want to wait and see what happens with them before I actually make a book recommendation. So in this part 1 video, I'm going to be giving 6 book recommendations out for 6 of the characters, and I know enough about them, I believe, to be able to make these book recommendations. So we're going to start out with, of course, one of my favorite characters, very nuanced, very interesting, our beloved Penelope Featherington, aka, and this is a spoiler if you haven't ever seen either season 1 or season 2 or read the books, so spoiler, also Lady Whistledown. I think Penelope is an incredible character. I think she's a very strong woman. I think she makes a lot of mistakes, especially in the show, but I think that's realistic. She's a wallflower. She's very awkward in public. She's been in love with Colin, who she's been friends with for a very, very long time. But she has this hidden, witty side to her. She's an accomplished writer. She is an accomplished businesswoman in a sense, actually, because she's been running this business for quite a few years now. She's incredible. I think there's so much about her that is strong and interesting, but I see there's so much room for growth. And I think she's a very relatable character for a lot of people, especially because in the book, she was a larger girl when she was younger. In the TV series, she is a slightly larger girl. So it's nice to see some of that representation within this show. And of course, some of the difficulty that goes along with trying to find a love match when you're not maybe the most gregarious when it comes to the marriage market. So for Penelope Featherington, our lover of gossip, I'm going to go with one of my all-time favorite series. And I know I recommend this series a lot, but I think this works for Penelope so well. And that's the Crazy Rich Asian series by Kevin Kwan. Now, Penelope is a gossip. She loves gossip. And I just think she would love this book. I think she would get a kick out of it. I think she would find it hilarious because she does have a lot of jokes. She's a funny person, and she would get the humor. She would get Kevin Kwan's humor. I think that she would enjoy the conversations around society and different places within society and the different people and their roles within society. I think she would really get a kick out of that because it's very much what she does being Lady Whistledown. She can be very judgmental in the comments she makes, and it is very reminiscent of what I feel we find when we read Crazy Rich Asians. I also see a lot of parallels when it comes to our main character, Rachel Chu, and Penelope. Now, Rachel isn't necessarily a wallflower. She's not the wallflower type, but she's a very strong woman, and she believes very firmly in the life she's living, in the person that she is, and the future that she wants to have. She believes very strongly in her abilities as an independent woman. And Penelope really is that. She has a career. She is Lady Whistledown. She's making a living for herself. She's going against the status quo of what was expected of women at that time. And Rachel Chu isn't necessarily living in a time when this would be a thing, except that she's marrying into Nicholas Young's family, where women don't do what Rachel Chu does. Women are expected to take on a specific role within this incredibly wealthy Singaporean network of families. And Rachel Chu does not want to have that role. She doesn't want to be just a stay-at-home mom where she takes care of her husband and takes care of the kids. She wants to have her career. She wants to have everything. And Penelope wants to have everything. And so I feel like there's a similarity between these two, as well as when Rachel actually comes into this family and starts partaking within the Singaporean ton, in a sense, because she is within this place in society where everybody is incredibly wealthy and has to have the perfect pedigree, and it's really, really difficult to find success in this place in society unless you're a specific person from a specific family, and she meets a lot of pushback because of it. Penelope and the Featheringtons face a lot of ridicule within the ton because they don't have quite as much money as everybody else does. They have had some big scandals, and they're also viewed as somewhat ostentatious and ridiculous by a lot of people from the ton. So I feel like Penelope's in this position within society, even though she, hobnobs with everybody who is at the upper echelons of society. She's not respected as some of the other people like the Bridgertons are. And that's very much the same as Rachel. Rachel is not respected. So I feel like Penelope would relate to this story so much. She would enjoy all the gossip. She would enjoy all the humor. She'd find a bit of kinship with Rachel Chu, our main character. Colin Bridgerton, that softie, he's a romantic. He is a hero. He likes to save people and be the protector of all. He also is an adventurer. He loves to go and find new places. He's looking for what he wants to do with his life by traveling the world. He's also got a really strong sense of humor, and he likes to be silly and fun. So when I was thinking of Colin Bridgerton and I was thinking about the authors I believe he would enjoy, I actually thought very strongly that he would like most books by John Steinbeck. And so the book that I actually ended up going with is Travels with Charlie in Search of America by John Steinbeck, because this is a book where John Steinbeck is traveling America, learning about different people, exploring the land, but also exploring the people. Like, he is really a people person, John Steinbeck is. And so is Colin. Colin loves people. He's interested in people. He is kind to people. He wants to know them better. He wants to understand them. He wants to protect them. And John Steinbeck often does that in his writing. He is a hero to the poor man. He is a hero to everyday man. He wants to tell the stories of the people who are everyone around us that we don't tend to look twice at. And that's one of the things I love about John Steinbeck. I don't feel that he is necessarily the hero in the same way that Colin wants to be the hero, but I feel like there is a similarity in the way they value humanity and want to protect the people they care about, or want to bring light to the stories that are not often heard. And we do see this with Colin when he protects, like, Penelope against Cressida. He's looking at someone who in society is not deemed on the same level. Cressida's treating her terribly, and he brings to light that Cressida's being a jerk to her, and he's trying to help Penelope and help how people perceive her. And I think that Colin is the kind of person, because of his kindness, that could take that kindness and that wanting to save people, rescue people, help people, and make it something bigger than himself. I believe that he could do that. And so I think that he would get inspiration from John Steinbeck, because I think he would enjoy the humor that John Steinbeck brings to his books, the cleverness, the wittiness. I think that he would enjoy the social commentary, because Colin is very clever, and I think that he could understand where Steinbeck is coming from with a lot of his stories. And I feel like John Steinbeck would inspire Colin because, and I guess this is kind of spoilery for the show, so if you don't want to hear about this, skip forward a little bit. But in the books, this is pretty common knowledge that Colin is a travel writer. He's written in his journals about his travels, and he's very proud of his writing, but he's very afraid of his writing. Like, he's afraid to share it. And I think that someone like John Steinbeck, who writes beautifully about his own travels, would inspire Colin to be able to feel more free to share his travel writing. So that's why I think Colin would really enjoy Travels with Charlie in Search of America by John Steinbeck, and probably most of the other John Steinbeck books. So for Eloise Bridgerton, our beloved feminist who feels very strongly about the things she's passionate about, she feels strongly about going against the status quo of society and the ton. She feels very strongly about being the voice that fights against oppression and the different things that feel unfair and unjust. I think that she's the kind of person who will speak up for these things. She's also clever and she's interesting. I can see her finding a lot of different subjects interesting. And so for her, I decided to go with Radium Girls by Kate Moore. This is this nonfiction book, which was really a fantastic book. I enjoyed it a lot. It was devastating. And I don't think Eloise would be afraid of a devastating book. It was a time when women were put to work in the cosmetic industry, manufacturing cosmetics, doing different jobs where they were working with radium, because at the time it was believed to have health benefits, it was believed to be safe, it was believed to be in this amazing thing, and it was like exciting and people wanted to work with it until these women started having horrible, horrible illnesses. Radium, we know now, is incredibly dangerous, and these women were having so many different horrific side effects, long-term illnesses. Nobody would listen to them. Nobody would believe them, because at the time radium was still believed to be good for you. And there were so many companies that were creating products that use radium that they wanted to show that, no, it's still good for you. These are all lies. And so you have this group of women who don't have a lot of power. They were just regular working class girls who are trying to fight for justice. They're trying to fight for justice. It's obviously been difficult on them and their families, but they're not looking for money. They're just looking to be heard. They're looking to protect other women. They're looking to help people that have been hurt like they have. And I think Eloise would feel very passionate about this story. I think she would also love to see a group of women going against all odds, being as powerful as they can be, even when they're not women who necessarily are heard. I mean, for one, they're women, and two, they're working class women, so they're less likely to be heard by society, still pushing and pushing and pushing and fighting for themselves. And I just feel like this is something that would touch Eloise deeply. And I think she would also then gain a lot of inspiration for herself and the fights that she will eventually want to have as a woman at a time when women don't have a lot of freedoms. Being able to see that other women have fought as hard as she wants to fight, I think that would be a great book for her. I think she'd love it. Then we've got Queen Charlotte, who I think is an incredible character. She's very nuanced, she's very unique, and a very strong woman. She had a very interesting life, which we learned a lot more about in the Queen Charlotte story. And so I'm using that information that I know about her from her story, her previous life, to help me with this choice. I know that she's also going to be a very important character in this particular season because she has very strong feelings about Lady Whistledown, and I know she wants to know who Lady Whistledown is, and this is Penelope's season, so something about Lady Whistledown is going to come out, and I have a feeling that the Queen is going to be a big part of that. Because she's so complex in a lot of ways, I'm going to give her The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I think this works really well for Queen Charlotte. I think she would be entertained by it, and entertainment is very important to her. I think she would be challenged by this book, and I think she is just as challenging as this book in a sense. The jargon in this book, the language that N.K. Jemisin has created, makes it so the beginning of this book takes you a while to really get into it, and you're not sure how you feel about it at first. And then once you get into it and you really start understanding it, it gets so good. And I really feel like that's true for Queen Charlotte. When we first meet her, she seems very self-important. She's a queen. But, you know, you just don't know where her loyalties lie. You don't know what's important to her. She seems like all she cares about is snuff. And some of the things that you're like, this is kind of I don't know. She's just not very compelling in a lot of ways. And so at first it felt kind of challenging to really like Queen Charlotte. But as we get to know her a little more here and there throughout the seasons, and then of course with her own backstory, we see she is so much more than what we originally thought. And I feel like the fifth season, it's not quite the same, but I feel like we start with a bit of a challenge with this one, but you have to make it through that challenge. You have to get to know this book better in order to love it as much as I loved it. I think it was a fantastic book. This is a fantasy sci-fi, and our main characters in this are these strong females who've had to face horrible situations and are trying to find a better life for themselves, for the people they care about. I think that that's really very similar to Queen Charlotte. She has had a really tough life. She's been put in situations that she didn't have any control over, and it was horrifying at times. It was painful at times. She had to take the reins and really force people to let her live her own life. And I feel like our characters in this are striving really hard just to be able to live the life they want to live the way they want to live it. We also have these magical people, and I can't remember what they're called right now. It's just been too long. They are hated by everyone else. They're looked down upon. They're not allowed to be a normal part of society because they're believed to be so dangerous. And I feel like there's somewhat of a parallel between this and what Queen Charlotte represents within Bridgerton, because she comes into being a queen as a Black woman, and that was unheard of before her time. There was no mixing in the ton between white people and the people of color. And because Queen Charlotte comes into this role as the queen, everything changes. So I feel like there is that separation of people within society that we find in 5th season, and that's a really big theme in this book. It ends up being a really big theme in Queen Charlotte's story. And then I guess finally, this is incredibly dramatic. There's so many dramatic elements to this. There are so many things that just are shocking. And Queen Charlotte's life, Queen Charlotte's experience has a lot of that too. And she is a very dramatic person. And so I think that these match really well. I think that she would be very interested in this if she gave it the time. Next, we've got Lord Debling. And what we know about Lord Debling is he's going to be a possible match for Penelope Featherington this season. And he is someone who's decisive. He knows what he wants. We also know that he's a conservationist, a vegetarian, which was basically unheard of at the time. He is an animal lover. He's a world traveler. He's a bit of an introvert. And he feels very strongly about the life he wants to lead and not being part of the mainstream within society. And he sees Penelope as this person who's very similar to him, and he appreciates her right away. He is very honest and forthcoming with her, which is something that Colin has never been. So I'm very excited to see the role that Lord Debling is going to play in pushing little Colin along, because he needs to be pushed. So for Lord Debling, I'm actually going to recommend Braiding Sweetgrass by Ramad Wall Kimmerer, because I believe that this is a little ahead of his time, but I think that he's the kind of person who could appreciate looking at science and ecology and conservation the way that Ramad Wall Kimmerer does. I think the two of them would have a really good conversation. And I think that bringing in the Indigenous knowledge, understanding is the part that makes it ahead of his time. But I think that it would open his eyes a lot. And I think that he would then maybe appreciate some of his travels more, be more conscientious, because at that time, a lot of scientists were completely awful in the way that they went around collecting scientific information. A lot of scientists did really not so great things at that time. Naturalists did not appreciate the world around them and respect the world around them the way they should have. So if he had this understanding of the Indigenous wisdoms and the way that the other people he's coming into contact with may look at and understand science, I think that he would benefit a lot from that. And I also think he would enjoy this because it goes against the status quo of what science looks like at the time that he's alive. I think that he would learn a lot more than other scientists have learned at the time that he's alive. It sounds like he's a pretty kind person. It sounds like he's a pretty thoughtful person. And like I said, he goes against status quo. He doesn't want to be like all the other people in the ton. So I think that he's going to appreciate a different look at science because he is a different type of person. So I'm hoping that he enjoys my recommendation. I think that he's going to get a lot out of this. And my final recommendation is for one of my favorite characters. I love Lady Danbury. I think she is an incredible woman. I think she's an incredibly strong woman who has faced a really awful past. And we learned a lot more about her past in the Queen Charlotte story. I also think she is an independent woman who's made a life for herself, who really has made a name for herself. And she loves to gossip. She loves to throw a party. In the book, she's a lot more like scary to people. I think she's not quite as scary in the show. I really like the way they depicted her within the show. And I just see her as being this very strong woman who's made her way in a world where women are not allowed to make their own way. You know, they're not allowed to make their way on their own. And she really has done it. She has pushed for herself. I know that in this next season, someone's going to come back from her past that is going to throw a wrench in things, and I think it's going to throw her off her game a little bit. I'm excited to see it because I just think Lady Danbury is a very fascinating, interesting character, and she sort of ties everybody together. She brings everybody together. She is the person who is very intuitive. She tends to see a lot of what's going on within society around her, and she tries to bring matches together. She tries to heal some of those wounds. You know, I feel like she is a very important role within society. So I'm going to recommend The Color Purple by Alice Walker to Lady Danbury because I think that this is a book, especially based on her past, that she can relate to heavily. Because in The Color Purple, we have our main character, Celie, who is really poorly treated by her family. Granted, Lady Danbury is not necessarily poorly treated by her family, but her life is determined for her by her family. And Celie gets married off to this man that she has no love for, no desire. She absolutely hates this marriage she gets put into. And so does Lady Danbury. Lady Danbury had a horrible marriage. She hated it, every moment of it. and she was just waiting for it to be over. I think that Sealy and Lady Danbury have a lot of similarities in that sense. And I feel like they both grow so much throughout their life. They both become way more confident. They both stick up for themselves at certain points. For Sealy, it's because she meets Shug, who's her husband's lover, and she gets to know her and she begins to love Shug. And I think that because of that, it causes Sealy to have a lot more confidence to gain a life for herself. Lady Danbury's the same way. She builds her life into something that is so much more than what she had to begin with. And she never had a choice. She was raised to be his wife. And then another reason why I believe Lady Danbury would really enjoy The Color Purple is because it was set during the Civil Rights era. One of Lady Danbury's driving factors in Queen Charlotte when she was younger was to integrate society, was to see the future be different for her children, for the people around her, for the Ton, and to be herself a central part of this society where people of color were not allowed in. And I think that's very similar to a lot of the conversations you're going to have in The Color Purple because of when it took place, of what's happening in the world around that time, and the situation that Sealy is when she's a child versus as she gets older, and what kind of changes she sees happening around her as she goes along. I think that's going to be a very important, interesting storyline for Lady Danbury. I do see Lady Danbury often being someone who wants to have fun and wants to just look at more joyful aspects of life, but she has faced a lot of sad things. And I think she could appreciate the more serious, somber notes of The Color Purple. I think she would really enjoy it. So those are my 6 recommendations. Let me know in the comment section down below if you have other books that you would have recommended to these characters. I would love to hear some of your recommendations. And I would also really enjoy to hear some of your thoughts on my own recommendations. Do you believe these were good choices for these characters? I did put a lot of thought into it. So, I mean, I think based on what I know about these characters, these would be good book choices. Would they actually read them and like them? I don't know. Are these books very similar to their personalities? That I do believe to be true. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe so you can see what happens. What happens? I don't know. All I'm thinking about is watching Bridgerton today, so I really don't care about anything else. No offense, no offense. I mean, I'll be back. I got things in the works. I am gonna be able to do a TBR video soon. So, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.